to analyze, or they gave me my choice, but there were several news items that you already heard this evening that the news director said that someone needs, and it's evidently fallen to me, that someone either has to refute, analyze, or to read these backwards. So let's see. This one came from the Arts and Entertainment desk, and it said, everyone has something deep inside them, but in most cases it's not anything. Let me just read them right quick and we'll go back. The weak and stupid have always enjoyed believing that their human actions can inflict great pain on the gods, and have now extended this to include the planet. People of ordinary intelligence always believe that something of extreme importance happened in the past. Oh, well, probably some important things may have happened, but only ordinary people ever think about them. If you misquote a man, he won't care if it makes him famous. If you want to feel sympathy for others, first, feel sorry for yourself. Just because a particular question is asked over and over again, the ordinary assume that it has some particular importance. If your own mind that is, if you suddenly felt like the other guy on the radio that always repeats everything, like you kill more time by repeating the setup to your story. A woman in Teaneck, New Jersey. A woman in Teaneck, New Jersey. You always don't hit the radio until you catch on that the man cuts down. He's whoever it is. He got like a 15-minute radio show, but you can cut surely a good 3 minutes off to have him direct copy just by. If your own mind is not. If your own mind is not first bulletproof, if your own mind is not first bulletproof, then you'll never work your way up to a caliber-sized shell capable of doing yourself any real damage, and thus of doing yourself any real good. Here's one that was read that I don't think it actually got through the airways correctly. I guess we'll find out. Maybe you did hear it and just didn't. Only those who know something and those of routine delusion believe that things are getting better, and only the latter ever mention it. When they forget how the music goes, the ordinary will begin singing the words. The dumber you are, the safer it is to go ahead and be serious. Well, let's go back to the first one. Everyone has something deep inside them, but in most cases it's not anything. Knowing the station manager and all the people here and life itself as I do, I am sure this is not intended as some cynical comment. Maybe you're cynical and you heard it that way, but it is not. But consider that everything in life, all religion and nowadays psychology, the modern man's religion, and everyone feels it as part of just general ordinary wisdom to say that, you can look at a man, he could be wearing overalls, he could have a bad complexion, lost his hair, crippled. But you say deep inside, everyone, has something. Which there was a news item our last show. In fact, I think I repeated it once or twice after it was read, and nobody still liked it. Straighten out the sentence for yourself. No one seemed to still get anything out of it. That is, that even dumb, just ordinary people are as good as anybody else. But why is it that so much of humanity says they're even better? Well, if you screw with me, I'll dig out the definition of humility that we read tonight. See, I was going to let that one go. It's Neuron's version of docility. it would seem to be the reasonable, humane, if not religious based, but it's obviously humane and magnanimous in your perception of your fellow man, is to always say that everyone is as good as anyone else. Which there is no profit in dealing with that or arguing with that, except a follow-up to it that no one ever considers is to say, well, even the dumbest of us, even the densest, the most torpid and witless of us all are as good as anybody else. But why is it that so much of humanity won't leave it there? They insist, nay, better. Back to this one. I guess I'll quit on that one. Deep inside them, everyone has something. Except in most cases, it's not anything. You could, if you wanted to spend enough time, you could pick apart all the ideas in the past, which is almost unnecessary now. Or it's like beating a dead bowl of whipped cream. Is the idea that everybody has a soul, a spirit, that yes, you can look at a person and they appear to just be, oh, I don't know, just a person. But now inside is some kind of cosmic, religious, spiritual, ephemeral, supernatural spark. Which again, for those of you that have followed our sister show where we do medicine for the layman at home, the spark, this cosmic spark, it's nice that they said spark in the past because it is partial electricity, and the cosmic spark can easily be cut off. But the idea that from a religious view, you didn't lose your place, you just lost your place. That from a religious view, the idea that everyone has, no matter how they look, how mundane, routine, and ordinary, that inside, even the lowliest of us all, you're back to that again, huh? Even the lowliest of us all. I didn't ask you to raise your hand. Even the lowliest of us all have inside them some great cosmic spark. Then the variation becomes deep within everyone. I mean, well, this person over here appears to be a victim of obsessive behavior. Forget the galaxy's largest hairball. Since no one seemed to... That was the one that said if obsessive gamblers were cats. But we can't go back and do every one of them. Psychologically, someone could say nowadays, you see this person over here, they have, they're a victim of compulsive behavior. They're neurotic. That's the very kind of person that does believe that people only live in foreign countries, you know, to get away from them, that kind of thing. But if you were psychologically inclined rather than religiously inclined, then your feeling is, well, the person may look that way, but I know him. And deep inside, not only him, but everyone, people that seem to have some psychological problems, deep inside, you know, inside of everybody, deep inside is something else. And that is a fine, if I may editorialize, a fine update of the idea of some great cosmic spark, or some little something that's a piece of the gods, or, you know, a little, just a small little kind of farty sound from the Big Bang is still resonating within the solar chamber of everyone. That I am a little bit of everything. You're a little bit of Walt Whitman? No, I'm just a little bit of everything. Plus, nobody liked the one about the guy whose motto in life was, hey, if you're going to look for trouble, see, he was going to tell you, it's somewhere close to Philadelphia or Camden, if you stay off the bridge, because that is where Whitman... Back to the subject. No. It would appear to be, again, of significant interest is to say, well, a man who can appear to be somewhat at loose ends, a man who can appear to have psychological problems, which don't we all? I didn't say raise your hand. Don't we all? But inside is something else. Going from religion, as I set up the premise, to psychology, even to just contemporary, well, name contemporary, collective wisdom. Just the common wisdom of everyone, even if they're not psychologically versed or if they're not religiously inclined, believe that inside of everybody is something else. And with sans any cynicism now, that is irrefutable. It is just uncivil. It's almost unthinkable to deny that. No matter what the context. If somebody just said, do you realize, if just somebody was talking, and let's assume that you have no interest in religion or psychology, and you've got no interest in whoever they're discussing, but somebody just starts talking about how people are, and they say, you know, it strikes me though, it's easy for us to complain about our fellow man and criticize one another. But you know, inside of everybody, you know, deep inside is something else. You know, there's something. And anybody on this planet that is civil, sane, talking, will have to say, yeah, there's just no way out. Except for this. What the hell is it? Which, of course, you're back to, strike, of course, off the tape, which you're back to another news item tonight that we were not analyzing, having to do with if you outspend other people and you believe that makes you superior, blah, 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 then you're part of the world's least exclusive club. And then the punchline, or the addendum, had to do with the fact that people do not like to think about this. For one very good reason. They don't like to think about it or try to figure it out for one good reason, because they're pretty certain that it would be just a snap to do. That's why people do not like to think about this. What I just said. That a man will say, contemporary, collective wisdom will say, well, inside of everyone, no matter what they appear to be, inside of everyone, deep down inside, yeah, is something else. Yeah. What? See? Nobody thinks about that. Nobody wants to deal with that. And you may ask why. All right. Why? So we keep paying him, and it's nice to get some work out of him, because sometimes we go for days. Everyone, back to where we were, everyone is absolutely certain. Without any analyzation, everyone is certain, or they will go along with it if it's pointed out that deep inside of everyone is something else. And everyone, yes. But no one analyzes, no one thinks about, no one even tries to figure out at all, not only what it is, which is bad enough, but why do we believe that, which is the same thing. But if you ask somebody when they're nodding along, yes, no doubt about that. It's all based on, in general, that men are not simply creatures of the body. They're not simply hormonal beasts. They're not simply animals. They're not beavers and possums and hippos that can tie a tie and get a hairdo. That there's more to them than that. And all humans, not beavers, hippos, nobody else agrees. That's another story. But all humans go, because of the fact that deep inside, and it's not true with dogs, no other beast, but deep inside a man, yes, deep inside is something else. What? The question I presented was, why does no one want to think about this? And I'll tell you why. Nobody wants to think about it or figure out, why, that's a good question. Why didn't I ever think about that? I'll tell you why. Why didn't I ever try to figure that out before? I'll tell you why. Why? Because people realize that's an easy one. So, as all of you know, if you do not want to see those unsightly spots and rash on your hand, what do? You look way off. You go, look at that poor woman way over there. God, ain't she got ratty looking hair. Look at that man over there. You look somewhere else. Deep inside a man, deep inside is something else entirely. Ah, yes. I can almost see it at the edge of the universe. I mean, it's out there just hanging around. Just the information. We can almost grasp it. Has anyone ever considered, instead of looking that far, you could look in another direction to find out what it is deep inside of a man? Now, I don't know what you're talking about. rather than pursuing the past, rather than studying the great thoughts. We're talking about the great thoughts of the past thinkers. The Greeks, the Romans, the church fathers. Rather than that, this great something. And they spoke about it. And you can kill, if you're interested that much, you could kill 50 or 60 years. In other words, go ahead and die by reading the thoughts of other people. Run through all of the literature. What did Aristotle theorize about the soul of man? The little piece of the cosmic reality. And you can read and then you can move into the Hindu literature, then the Buddha, then the contemporary philosophers. And you're safe. I mean, if somebody tried to ask you, well, why don't you consider the matter for yourself? I'm getting to it. I got to have some kind of foundation. I got to have a background. I'm studying. I'm going to find out what it is deep inside of man, whether it be its soul or spirit. But there is something deep inside of man. We established that, right? Right. So I'm working on it. You understand? All of that is still this. You know, look way over there. If there is something great, deep, inside of each and every man, not what he simply appears to be, but something else deep inside. Why not look, I know as foolish as it sounds, why not look in maybe another direction rather than to the past or out there? And the reason you don't, of course, is if you're ordinary, you might come up very easily with the answer about what is it that's deep inside of a man. Well, that's a whole lot of manniness. But as far as this great something that's deep inside of everybody, it's mainly nothing. I'm sure the news director would like for me to add that that was a joke. If you misquote a man, he won't care if it makes him famous. That could surely be explained and analyzed in 30 seconds or more. On the surface, it's got to be ridiculous, correct? As all of this is. We're talking about a serious man. We're talking about ordinary people. We're not talking about idiots, foolish people. We're talking about real ordinary, decent people. Out in the mainstream, out in the intellectual arena of life, people publicly making statements of some kind. And to say a man does not care if you misquote him is ridiculous. But, and you realize now we're not talking about any particular man, we're talking about the way that the intellectual world expands, the way that it moves, and the way that men are carried along with it while believing, yes, I'm carrying along the intellectual world. That's one of the benefits of being a swimmer as opposed to a swimmer's trunks, because it's easier to believe that I am moving right along. You notice that the water has not entered into this discussion as of yet. It has not spoken. It has never called anyone's hand. If you misquote a man, back to what we were talking about, he won't care, which has got to be ridiculous. Is it? Pick out an extreme example. We don't have enough time for me to cut every little corner for you. But you could pick out, well, since we're out of time, I really make it ridiculous. You can figure it out yourself. You could take someone who was already an expert, and a recognized authority in some field, and misquote him. And as soon as he sees it in a national publication, do I have to tell you? I mean, he has been misquoted to the point that it's of some significance now. And he sees that the reporter almost got his sentence backwards during that interview yesterday. And by the time he can rush to the phone, he's going to call his attorney. He's beginning to, sweat intellectual bullets himself. What's this going to do to me? I have got to get a public retraction at least as widespread as the coverage of the article itself, this erroneous article. My reputation is done for. I'll be laughed out of my discipline. my field. Except before he can get to the phone, he looks outside, and the yard is full of more reporters than he's ever seen in his life. And they're climbing all over each other, and they're still taking, and he can't figure it, and he goes, and it takes a couple of seconds, and they're hollering about this misquote about, and over behind him is people from other universities and other labs and think tanks waving grants and money like, All of this on the basis that isn't what I said. I didn't mean that. And suddenly, hey, his stock has gone up like that. Should we all now give a slight pause and go, is there anything such as true intellectual integrity? Or, Of course, that's the easy way I'd start talking like that. This was right to the heart to start with. I'm just trying to cushion it a bit. You think he's going to care? You can figure it yourself. If it's ordinary people, of course, this would not get anywhere. They could debate it forever. And if they thought it was of any interest at all intellectually, they could leave and go down to a bar and sit and think, well, that's an interesting little idea. It's not an interesting little idea. It's a news fact. It's not an idea. It's not a theory. It's not a debatable point. It just seems that way if you can't face it, such as deep inside of everyone is something else. Ah, yes. Well, what is it? I don't know. We'll go off and debate it and have some coffee. Nah, tell me what it is. No, that ain't the way life works, remember? The band quit playing and the mayor stood up in the stands and announced. It didn't even say that was from the sports desk, but you figured it out. The mayor stood up just as soon as the music was over and said, let he who is without advice throw out the first ball. And somebody said, Your Honor, that is not the way civilization is played. Deep inside of everybody is something. Hey, I know what it is. It's nothing. No, they'll put you right out of the stadium. You're off the team. You do not say things like that. If you misquote a man, he won't mind if it makes him famous. Think about now instead of a man, are we completely out? The intellect itself. The intellect, it's running at the ordinary level, is an extremely stable, goal-oriented, isn't that the way kind of people nowadays talk? Specifically intent in its drive to perfection, the truth. And the man, let us say the guy made up. Let us say he was in something. Which is more important? It's a foolish question. I was going to say that nowadays philosophy or physics. Be either one. And the man's misquoted to the point that everything he's worked for, the main thesis upon which he made what little reputation he has, they misquote him to the point that now it sounds like he is denying his own ideas. And imagine how crushed he was from my little thing until he looked out and it took him 4 or 5 minutes to realize, I am now on the verge of being more famous than I ever dreamed. But it's on the basis that I was misquoted. Try to get past the thing about a man. I'll keep you distracted. Like, boy, isn't that an interesting scenario? That is an interesting thing. Forget all that. The mind itself, the collective neural network of humanity, is to ask yourself, does it make any difference? Of course, then there's one small step from that. If you really get good to think, wait a minute. How about the whole idea I've been working all my life at trying to figure things out and get to the truth? What if, even looking at the past and the whole, what seems to be the schematic of the truth, it's all a whole bunch of misquotes. Well, not all. I shouldn't say that. How about half? Just thrown in, just misquotes, but it made somebody famous. Or, put it another way, it worked. Wait a minute. If it wasn't true, it couldn't work. They gagged me with an arrow. Well, bye. The tape's all gone, I assume. All right, everyone cough. But with you women, it's not necessarily bend over.